Hello everyone. I welcome you all to cybersecurity training sessions from Zoom Technologies. So in this session, we will be discussing about what is cybersecurity and what actually are we trying to do in this. Now, before we start with the discussion about what is cybersecurity, let us first understand what do we mean by the term security. So guys, Mr. Kiran, Mr. Abdul, yeah, Mr. Ranjit, yes. Yes. So, guys, like what you said, security is like protection, right? So, what you said is absolutely correct. So, we are trying to protect something. When we say we are trying to secure it. Now, let us apply this particular concept to a network, right? So, generally, we know in case of a network, we have things like servers, we have user data, we have some other network devices like say switches, routers, firewalls. So when we try to protect this network, we call it as a network security. Right? The same way, if we are trying to protect which user is trying to access what and how do we secure the resources, that we call as cyber security. So before we understand why do we need cyber security, let me give you a simple example on how organizations are setting up the networks. So I'll just give you a simple example here. So let's say you are the administrator, right? And you have to set up a network for your organization. So you'll be starting with setting up the server. So you'll have a server for the organization. Now you may have multiple servers in the organization. Just for simplicity's sake, I'll only consider one server in our example. Right? Now let's say on this server, we have hosted organizations website and email resources. So organization's website and email has been configured on the server. Now in the network, along with server, we will also have few client computers and all, right? And they're all connected to each other so that from client computer, we will be able to access the website or we will be able to send and receive emails. Right? Now this group of systems, your LAN computer, server and all together, we call this as a domain. So it's nothing but like a group of computers which belong to one particular organization or maybe one particular department in your organization. Right. Now, assuming you are the employee of this organization and you also have access to one of the LAN computer. So from this LAN computer, will it be possible for you to access the company's website? So you want to see what is available in the website, what all content has been published and all, right? And you already have access to one of the LAN computer. You are already in the office. So will you be able to connect to this particular website? What do you say? Yes. So you will be able to connect to the website and access the content if you are in office and you have access to the LAN computer. So what you guys have said is correct. Now let us say after your office hours, maybe say after 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, right? You have gone back to your home. Now, from your home, using your laptop or maybe using your mobile phone, you wanted to access the company's website, right? So you're already connected to internet from the home network, right? So you're already connected to internet from the home network. Now you want to access the company's website and see how does it look like when you are accessing it from home, right? So is that possible for you to access the company's website from your home? Yes. Yeah. Okay, so as some of you are responding in chat saying that it is possible, and some of you have said it is not possible, right? So let me give you an understanding. Now, from your home, right? Maybe you are using a laptop or you are using a mobile phone and you want to access the company's website. From home, you are already connected to internet. But if you see, according to the existing network here, right? According to this diagram, we haven't connected our office network to internet, right? So if we have not connected our office network to internet, it will not be possible for us to access the resources from internet. So what we have to do, we will take a internet connection from ISP, and using a gateway device like a router, we will connect our office network to internet, right? So far our office network was a private network. It is not connected to any external resource, right? We have a network in office, but only those resources like our LAN computers and the server will be able to access that, right? But now what we did, we have taken an internet connection through some ISP, and using a network device, a router, we have connected our office network to internet. So now we can say our office network as a private network, right? And this internet, as we all know, is a public network, right? So internet, as we all know, is a public network, right? So here, when you speak of accessing the website from your home, right? After connecting our office network to internet, will it be possible? Mr. Faisal, Mr. Abdul, Krishna. So now it is possible, right? Yeah. So if we connect our office network with internet, right, then it is possible for you to access your website from home, right? So you don't have to be in office now. Even if you are in home, you will be able to access the website. That's good. Now when you speak of accessing this website from internet, tell me, is it only possible for you to access this website from internet, or is it possible for every person on internet to access this website? Because we say internet is a public network, and there is no restriction that only a person who is working with so and so organization will have access to internet. So basically internet is accessible to everyone, right? So if internet is accessible to everyone, can any other person from any other location, any other country, will that person also be able to access the company's website? Yes, right. So as you said, it is possible for any other person to access your company's website. It need not be from your home network. So it is not like only the employee of this organization will have access to the website. Basically, every person on internet will have access to the website. Then what about the email resource? What about your email server? Will it also be accessible to every person, or will it only be accessible to your employees? Yeah. So as you say, it is only accessible to the employees, right? What you said is correct, but there's a small difference here, right? Now let us say I am not your employee. I am not one among your organization's employee, right? I'm an outsider. Assume your organization's website is something like www.abc.com. As we have already discussed, yes, we are able to access this website. Anyone can access this website, no restriction. Now, when I say I want to access mail.abc.com, which is your email web access, right? Even though I'm not an employee of your organization, right? I will still be able to access that particular page, right? I'll still see the login page. So if I have some username and password, I will be able to type it and then log into that particular email resource. What do you say? I'm not an employee of your organization, but when I'm sending a request, the email server or the email application, whatever is hosted on your server, is responding. It is showing me the login page, right? If I know the username and password, I can type it and log in, check the emails and all. But if I don't have the password, I will not be able to log in, right? Is that correct? See, again, you can compare this similar to how you access your Gmail. So any person can type www.gmail.com. They will see a login page which is asking them to type the user ID and the password. If the user ID and password is successfully verified, then he will have access to the content. If not, he doesn't have access. But the login page is available to everyone, right? So it means the resource what you are hosting on this particular server, be it website or be it FTP or email or any other application which you have hosted, is accessible to every person on internet. Whether do they have access to the content whatever is hosted there or not depends on whether the person is authorized to access the details, does he have the user ID and password, is he able to verify himself or not. So various factors come into picture, right? But now let us speak of different types of people who try to access your website, right? So assume, as I already said, I am an outsider, right? Now if my intention is only to connect to your server, see what content you have published on your website, and if something is useful, maybe I'll go to the contact page, I'll give you a call, or maybe I'll send you an email. I'll try to find out information about your organization or what kind of services or products you offer. If something is useful, I'll go ahead and continue business with you. But let us say your organization is not having a product which is useful for me, right? Now, let's say I want to purchase a mobile phone, but your organization is not selling mobile phones, but you are actually developing a software for mobile phone, right? So first I have to purchase a mobile phone, then I'll come to you for the software. So as of now, I don't have anything related to my requirements in your organization. So I'll just close the website, go back. So with this kind of behavior, there is no problem. You don't have any kind of risk. But let us say I visit your website, but I'm not really interested in what content you have published there. I wanted to see what else is available on this server. I want to see what else or what all other data is present on this server. And if possible, I want to launch an attack and take full control of this mission. I want to compromise your server and take full control of it. That is my requirement. So if you come across a person with these kind of requirements, then obviously we have some risk, right? So when we are connecting our organization's network to internet, there is always a risk with people who are accessing your servers or your resources from internet. If their intentions are to launch an attack and compromise your system or take control of your system, we will always have a risk, right? So these are the people we generally refer to as hackers, right? Now in our cybersecurity session, this is exactly what we are going to discuss. How do we stop these people and how do we protect our network, right? So I hope you got a basic idea like how organizations are hosting their servers or their network, and what is the problem that we have when we are connecting our organization network to internet. What do you say, guys? Is this clear or you have any other queries? Yeah, thank you. So let us go ahead. So when you speak of cybersecurity is a set of techniques which are used by administrators to protect the integrity of your networks or the programs whatever you have hosted and the data that is available in your network, right? So cybersecurity is not like a simple configuration where you have a series of steps, right? You execute it and then it is done. So cybersecurity is not like how we try to configure say a router or maybe a server and all, right? Cybersecurity is actually a series of things, right? It's a set of techniques or a set of procedures that we follow to protect a network or to protect our resources, right? So what are we trying to protect our resources from? Any kind of an attack which might damage the data or which might compromise our resources, or any kind of misuse. So we are trying to stop someone from misusing our data or deleting or destroying our data, right, using a set of techniques. So that is what we generally refer to as cyber security. In cyber security we have different aspects. So the first thing that we will be discussing in our cybersecurity sessions will be security risk assessment. So few moments ago we were discussing that when we connect our organization network to internet, we have a risk. We have some risk because everyone is able to access our resources. So we'll have to assess, we'll have to identify what is that risk, right? What is the threat, right? So the first module that we will be discussing in cybersecurity is security risk assessment, trying to see what is the risk associated, right? And then the second step is proactive defense and countermeasures. So we are going to implement some countermeasures. So once we know what is the risk, we are trying to implement security. We are trying to stop that. We are trying to see what techniques can be used to stop those attacks, right? And also proactive defense. Even before an attack happens, we are trying to secure our systems. So for this, we can take a simple example. Now, when we speak of our PC or a mobile phone, right? I guess everyone is using it, right? Now, on our PC or a mobile phone, do we have a password? So we always configure a password, right? So if it is a PC, you will have a password. If it is a mobile phone, you may have a PIN number or you may have a pattern lock or a fingerprint, right? So they're all different types of passwords, right? But why are we configuring them? Why do we configure a password on our PC or maybe on our mobile phone? Yes, as you said, it is to secure the device, right? So you don't want an unauthorized user to access your mobile phone or to access your PC and get access to that content or misuse the content. So that is the reason we are setting up a password for our PC or maybe a mobile device and all. So here you never faced any kind of attack. It's not like earlier you are not having a password, so someone took your mobile phone, they misused it, so later on you are trying to implement a password. Right from day one, when you purchase a phone and you start doing the configuration, you are setting up a password. That is proactive defense, right? You're not waiting for some incident to happen. You're trying to take some security precautions right from the beginning. So the second step that we are going to discuss in our cybersecurity is proactive defense and countermeasures. How do we try to implement security right from the beginning? What all things we have to consider, and we will also see what countermeasures can we implement if we come to know that there are some vulnerabilities or there are some loopholes in our network security. So that's our second module. And the third module is about incident response and management. Now see, whatever security measures that we are going to apply, right? We are never going to achieve 100% secure network. That's impossible, right? So there is always certain amount of risk, right? It may be 1%, it may be 2%, it may be 10%, right? So there's always some kind of risk to any kind of network, right? And if something goes wrong, if there is a hacking attack, if there is some data loss, how do you handle that incident? And in such event, how do you respond? How do you identify that something has happened? That will be our third module, right? Which is incident response and management. So now let us see in detail what exactly are these things. So the first module, as I said, is security risk assessment. So this is where we are going to concentrate on the hacking part, because I was earlier explaining, right? Once we are hosting our network and once we are permitting any user from internet to access our resource, there's always a risk. A person can launch an attack and compromise our system, right? So how do these hackers do the attacks, right? What all techniques they follow? So if we have to protect our network from any attack, the first thing we have to understand is how a hacker is successful in launching the attack. How do they do these attacks and all, right? And that is what we are going to learn in our first module, security risk assessment. So here, when you speak of hacking, hacking can be any form of unlawful computer intrusions. So intrusion means someone getting into your computer or someone trying to get into your server or your network resources without your permission. So someone trying to get into your network without your permission is called as intrusion, right? Obviously, a hacker would never ask us for a permission, right? So they'll never ask us like, okay, Mr. Admin, can I launch an attack onto your server and hack it? He will never do that, right? Now, when you speak of how these intrusions are being done, hackers are trying to bypass your network security by either stealing your data or destroying your data or sometimes stopping you from accessing your resources itself, right? So hackers try to bypass your network security. They will either find some weakness on your computer, take advantage of this weakness and launch an attack, or they steal your passwords. Just few moments ago we were discussing about why we configure passwords and all, and you guys were saying like to stop someone from accessing the network device or maybe accessing your mobile device or PC. Now what happens if someone else, maybe say your brother or your friend or some unauthorized user, someone else, some unknown guy, that person also knows the password, can he also have access to your mobile phone or your PC or maybe your online account? What do you say? Yes. So if someone else knows your password, he will be able to access your data, right? And he can also misuse the account or misuse that particular device. So hackers are trying to steal your data, right? By either finding a weakness on your system, launching an attack, or by trying to steal your passwords, right? Or sometimes they also use some applications called backdoors. So using a backdoor, a hacker will try to take full control of your system and you will not even be aware of it. You'll not even know that someone is remotely accessing or someone is remotely monitoring your data, right? So this is what hackers are trying to do. And the process what they follow is called as hacking. Now, generally, when you speak of hacking, would you call these activities legal or illegal? Yes. So hacking is always illegal. Right? Mr. Krishna, as you said, hacking can be legal, but we don't call this as hacking, right? So there's a different term for this, right? So there is something else called ethical hacking, right? Now, ethical hacking can also be called as white hat hacking, right? So here, when you speak of ethical hacking, this is a term which we generally use to describe hacking activity. So there is also a hacking activity, but this is performed to help the organization or an individual to identify potential security threats on their computers or on their networks. Right. So Mr. Krishna, as you said, hacking can be legal in certain conditions, but we have a different term for that. We call this as ethical hacking, right? So in ethical hacking, a hacker is authorized by an organization. He has been given permission to perform an attack and see if their network or their servers can be compromised. But this guy, he doesn't have an intention to destroy the data or steal the data or do some damage to the resources. He's trying to identify if there is a possibility that someone can break into your system, someone can get into your networks by bypassing the security. Right. Now this is legal. Right. So here you're authorizing a person or you're authorizing a team to audit your network to see if it is secure or not. And of course, whatever they find, if they find that there are some weakness or there are some loopholes in your security, they will report these vulnerabilities to you. They will tell you that, see, this is a weakness. So technically, we call them as vulnerabilities. They will report you saying that these are the vulnerabilities available in your network. Now, based on this, you will try to secure your resources. Right. So is that clear? Yeah. Thank you. So now, before we proceed and see how actually hackers are trying to do an attack, let me show you with some recent news articles which were published related to various kind of hacking attacks that are happening across the globe. So here I hope you're all able to view my screen, right? Yeah. So generally when we speak of hacking or hacking attacks, right? The first thing that comes to everyone's mind is a large data center or maybe a server, a big software company or a government agency, right? And someone is trying to get into their systems. Because that's what generally we see in movies and all, right? Right. But that's not really true today, because today if you see, hackers are able to hack into various different kind of devices, right? So here there is a news article which says there are some security bugs found in Mercedes-Benz cars, using which hackers are able to remotely take control of it. Now, generally, you might be wondering, what does a car have to do with internet or hacking and all, right? So that's what I just wanted to highlight. Now, when you speak of your today's automobiles, right, you are getting some options like, say, navigation. It tells you what is the route that you have to follow to reach a specific destination. Is also telling you like if there is some traffic jam or something, there is some problem on the road, it is also giving you an alternate route, right? And your navigation systems today are also able to tell you where exactly you have a toll gate, where is the speed camera and all, right? So how does your vehicle come to know that after 2 kilometers there is a traffic jam, so you'll have to take a different route here? How does your vehicle tell you that there is a speed gun after some 500 meters, so you'll have to reduce the speed? So in short, your automobile, it has a data connection, it has a SIM card which is connecting to internet, speaking to various servers, right? Now say for navigation, maybe it is speaking to Google Maps or some other mapping solution. So it is speaking to some remote server and it is fetching the information. So same as how your computer, how your laptop or mobile phone is connecting to that. So there's a data connection. It is getting access to internet. Now, what if this data connection is not secure? If the data connection is not secure, can someone get into your network? So in network here, you only have one system, which is your car. Yes, they are able to get in. And if they are able to get in, because there's a computer, and today, like all your automobiles, they are being controlled by a computer, right? So you have everything being done electronically rather than mechanically, right? So if a hacker got access to your vehicle, he will be able to control everything. He'll be able to control your, say, um, your entertainment, that is your audio and video, or maybe your braking system, how the way your engine performs, how the way your air conditioning works, right? And there's a different article here where hackers are trying to use this backdoor applications to take over Mac OS based systems. So as I said earlier, using backdoors, hackers will try to take control of our systems and we will not even be aware of it, right? So that's exactly what is happening here, right? And not only for your computers or your vehicles and all, even your mobile phones are not being spared. So here we have a news article which says there is a malware, right, which has a ability to steal your banking data. So today, if you see, most of us, we are trying to do all different sort of payments through mobiles, right? So be it online purchase, or maybe like you are just trying to purchase something, right? So you are going on with online transactions. Maybe you're going on to Amazon, or you go to Flipkart, or you go to, say, even if you just go there and you try to purchase something, say you want to purchase some snacks, how you are paying? You are trying to do payments through your UPI and all, right? So there is a malware which is trying to take advantage of it. It's infecting Android devices and then stealing your banking information, like what is a login credential, what is the PIN number that you are using to authorize the transactions, and all this information will be sent back to hackers, right? So basically, when you speak of hacking attacks, is not just limited to one kind of an operating system or one specific user or an organization. It can be done against any kind of system that is connecting to internet. Right? So is this clear so far? You have any queries, you can ask me. Yes, Mr. Avinash, as you say, yes, this kind of malwares will be infecting your mobile devices. Of course, this particular news article speaks about malware for Android, but in the past we have also seen malwares infecting your iPhones as well, right? So basically, there is no such thing that if you go with this kind of a product or this kind of an operating system, it is safe. So you have malwares for Android, you have it for iPhones, you have it for Windows, Linux, Mac, everywhere, right? Yes. In our sessions, we'll also be speaking about like how do we protect our devices and all from this malware, right? Not only how do we protect, we will also discuss about how do we create this malware, how hackers are creating this malware and all. So we'll also discuss that. So we have one full day discussion about that particular topic, right? Yeah. So now let me show you with some attacks how hackers are trying to compromise security of a system or a network. So for this, I will be accessing some remote website. So here, as you see, I'm accessing some forum, right, where I have an option to log in, right? So there's a login page. So just similar to every other website, which is asking us to type a user ID and password, right? Now we know if we have to successfully log in and access the content of that particular page, we need to have a user ID and password. So I don't have a username or password, right? I'll show you if there is a weakness, if there is a vulnerability on the website, how it is possible for a hacker to log into that particular website even if the user ID and password is not correct, or even if the user doesn't even have a account on that particular website, right? So here let me give a username as, say, Zoom, and I'm giving password as zoom@123. Now when I try to log in, as you can see here, it says invalid login because that particular user account has not been created. I haven't created any such user account with the username as Zoom and password as zoom@123. But because there is a vulnerability on this server, I'll try to trick this particular server. So I give the username Zoom, but along with that, I'm also giving some condition. So I'm asking the server to check if username Zoom is available. If not, or try to see if 2 into 2 is equal to 4. What do you say? Is 2 into 2 equal to 4? Obviously, right? And say 9 is equal to 9. So I'm just giving a simple condition. So I'm trying to ask the server, check if there is a username called Zoom, right? If that doesn't exist, try with 2 into 2 is equal to 4 or not. That will be true, and 9 is equal to 9. Of course, that is also true. And then I'm giving the same password, zoom@123, and now I say login. So here, as you see, I'm able to log into that particular website, right? Even though that user account Zoom does not exist, right? I'm able to access that particular web page. So this is a vulnerability on the server, right? So this vulnerability, we call it as SQL injection vulnerability. There is a weakness on the server, right? And using that, I'm taking advantage of the vulnerability. I'm able to log in into that particular server, right? So once I log in, I have all the privilege as any other user who will be able to log in and access the content or do some changes and all that, right? So not only this, today if you see, hackers are very smart, right? So even if you have checked with your messaging applications like say your WhatsApp or Telegram and all, right? So every day we keep receiving one or the other message which gives you with some kind of offer or some kind of deal. They give you a link, they ask you to click on the link, right? So I think like a few months ago there was a similar incident where hackers have circulated a message saying that Amazon is giving away some smart TVs. So to claim the smart TV, all you have to do is click on a link and register, right? So any person who has clicked on the link, they saw that confirmation message that yes, you have now registered yourself to participate in the lucky draw, but you have to add 1000 rupees into your Amazon Pay balance, which you can later on use. Now, many people have thought that, okay, this is true. They have added 1000 rupees into their Amazon Pay balance, and they are also able to get a confirmation message that 1000 rupees has been added. They were also able to see that in their Amazon app and all. But later on, what happened? Hackers were able to change the password of that Amazon user account. They were also able to change the contact telephone number and all, right? But how did hacker get access to this Amazon account? When the user was typing, when the user was clicking on the link and he was typing the username and password, that particular web page, what end user has received is not a genuine page, it's a fake one, right? And that's how hackers were able to steal the user ID and password. So once the username password was stolen, they were able to log in, change away the contact number, change away the password and all, and then transfer this 1000 rupees as a gift card and deliver it to some unknown location. So this has happened with some hundreds of users, right? So whenever you see some link on maybe a messenger application or some social media chat application or something, never click on it, right? Never directly click on that, right? So let me show you a simple example, right? How a hacker will be able to trace your exact location, how hackers will be able to trace your exact location using a simple link, right? So here I'm running some application which will help me to find out the details, help me to identify your exact location. So all I need to do is just share a simple link with you people. So I can assure you that with this particular link, right, I'm not going to hack into your mobile device or something, right? It's just for you to get an understanding that it is possible for someone to just send a simple link to you, and when you access that, they are able to track your location, and not only your location, even your mobile device or maybe your system's device properties and all, right? So I have shared this particular link in the chat window, so you can try to access that. Okay, so it just shows you a simple web page where you can find people who are nearby to you, right? Say like in a region of half a kilometer or 1 kilometer, right? If you have any of your friends or someone whom you know, you will be able to identify them, right? Okay, so we already got the information, right? So it is showing that one of you have accessed this particular link. Okay, so others who have not yet accessed, you don't have to access. So we already got this information here, right? So now let us see how does it look like, or what is this information that we have. So one of you who have accessed this link. Okay, Mr. Faisal, so it's you. Okay, good. So here it says that the device that you have accessed the link is an Android device running Android 10 operating system, right? And your CPU has 8 cores and the RAM is 8 GB on your mobile device, right? And your IP address is something like 27.6.13.69. So you can check this by accessing what is my ipaddress.com website. It should show you the same IP, right? And you are accessing it from Hyderabad, right? So is this all correct? And you are using your internet connection from Hathway ISP. Yeah. So here, as I've shared the link, right? So once that particular link is accessed, now as you can see, we are able to capture that person's mobile device details and also his location. So it is also directly giving you with a what do we say, a Google Map URL. So you can directly open this particular link on your web browser and try to find out what is the location of that particular user. So it also says he's using Google Chrome version 87 something. Okay, so let us just access that web page. Okay. So is this location correct? Yep. Thank you. So as you see, just by simply sending a link, a hacker is able to capture a user's location, right? So not only accessing user location, you'll also be able to uh, take control of the user mobile device camera, click pictures, record audio, right? So various things are being done by hackers now, right? So we'll be discussing all those things in our sessions, right? So now, speaking of different kind of hacking attacks, what hackers are trying to do. So these are different kind of attacks that hackers are doing, and we will be discussing all these things in our session, right? So we'll be discussing about attacks where hackers are trying to steal your passwords, or hackers are trying to steal your Wi-Fi network passwords, or hackers are trying to take control of your systems or your mobile devices. How hackers are compromising your websites. How do they launch an attack and destroy your website or steal the data and all? How hackers are creating viruses or worms, or even if you see in the recent past, right? There is a malware which is very widely being used by hackers called ransomware. So how hackers are using these ransomwares, right? So we'll be discussing all these kind of attack methods in our first module, that is security risk assessment, right? So guys, is this clear what actually we are trying to do in our ethical hacking module? Yeah. Yes, Mr. Krishna, we will also be doing this practically. I will also be sharing you with all the required tools and the required virtual missions using which you will be able to practice, and you will also be able to do this, right? So I'll be sharing all the required tools and all the virtual missions and all that. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So now let us continue with the second module of our cybersecurity discussion, which is proactive defense and countermeasures. So as I have already explained earlier, in the second module, we will be discussing about how do we secure our network, how do we protect our network and our network resources. So in this module, we will be discussing with technologies like firewall. So I'm sure that most of you would have already come across this term. In many cases, people generally say if you have to protect your network, you need to have a firewall installed in your network, right? So that's true. You need to have a firewall in your network, but a firewall itself is not really sufficient to provide you security from different kind of attacks or different kind of threats. So in addition to firewall, we will also be discussing with something called intrusion prevention system or IPS, right? So in the second module, we'll be discussing mainly about firewall and IPS. Using this, how do we try to identify and block the attacks, right? So to block attacks, we are using firewall in combination with IPS. So firewall and IPS will be used together, right? So that using this, we will be able to stop the attacks, right? Now, not only this, we will also be working with content security. So this is where you will try to restrict or control what kind of URLs or what kind of websites will be accessible to the user. And when user is trying to download some things, right, you will also be able to see if the file that is being downloaded is a genuine file or is it a malware. If it is a malware, you will be able to block it, right? You'll be able to stop user from downloading if the file is known to be a malware file, right? So that comes under content security. And in the same way, if you speak of having a secure communication from your head office to your branch office, right? You want to have a secure communication. You'll also be working with virtual private networks. So you'll be creating a virtual tunnel over internet from your head office to the branch office so that you can securely send and receive data through this VPN or the virtual private network. So how do we actually configure them? How do we install? How do we deploy firewall or IPS into our network? How do we configure them? And using these technologies, how do we control what is accessible, what is not accessible to the user, right? How do we identify if there is some kind of an attack and block them? That we will be discussing in our second module, which is proactive defense and countermeasures, right? So here, let me give you a simple understanding about how a small organization's network would be looking like. So you'll be having internet link, which will be terminated onto your firewall, and firewall is in turn connected to your switch, where you'll be having various devices like say your servers or your LAN computers, printers, telephones, right? Your IP telephones, right? And if you have some Wi-Fi access points, you also want to provide wireless network so that employees who use their laptops or mobile phones and all will be able to access. That is also connected to your firewall. So we can say that this firewall is now acting as a gateway device. So the firewall is acting as a gateway device using which traffic is going out of your network to internet and traffic is coming in from internet to your network. And as an administrator, you are going to write some policies on the gateway. You're going to write some policies on the gateway to control what kind of traffic is coming in or going out of your network, right? So for a small network, for a small organization's network, this is how simple the network looks like. It's pretty straightforward, not too complicated. Now, when you speak of a large organization, right, at the enterprise level, where you have, say, a head office, you have branch office, right? You also have multiple data centers to be connected with. You also have people who are remotely working from home, like what we are all doing now, right? So in that case, the network complexity would increase, right? So there again, you need a firewall to be deployed on the head office and branch office. You need to have a VPN between head office network to the branch office network. You need to have a VPN from head office to your data centers, right? Users who are working from home will also be connecting via VPN to your organization network, right? So how do you configure these VPNs? How do you give permissions for a group of computers to have access to a specific set of services or specific set of URLs? How do you deny someone from accessing your servers? Or how do you permit them only to access certain services? This is all we are going to discuss in our second module using firewall and IPS, right? So not only configuring them, we will also be able to monitor via logs on what actually is happening in the network. And if something is wrong, say there is some kind of attack or users are trying to access some resources which are not authorizing them, using these logs, we will be able to identify that, right? So let me show you how does a firewall interface look like, right? So that we will be able to see how we can write some policies to control the user activities. Okay, so here I'm connecting to a Storm Shield UTM product. UTM stands for Unified Threat Management, which contains firewall and intrusion prevention system both. So it has both the functionality. So let me just log in. So once we log in, this is how we have the interface looking like, right? So let me take you to the policies, what I have written. So here I have some policies written where I'm permitting my LAN network users to access certain resources. So here you can see the policies. I'm permitting LAN network users to access certain services like HTTP, HTTPS, SMTP and all. But at the same time, when users are accessing HTTP or HTTPS, I'm also asking my device to implement some URL filters. That is, I don't want my organization employees to access certain websites or certain category of websites. Like say, I don't want them to access shopping websites when they are in office. Let them go back home and then access whatever the website they want. But as long as they're in the organization, they are working with this. I don't want them to waste their time and resources getting access to some social media websites or online shopping websites and all. So I've created a URL filter policy which says accessing this social media or online shopping websites will be restricted. And I'm also trying to implement antivirus inspection so that maybe if user is trying to download something from internet and if that file turns out to be a malware, that will be blocked, right? And in some organizations you may have a requirement that from your organization network, from your LAN computers, you should not be accessing resources hosted in certain regions. So you call them as geolocation based restrictions. So based on the location, you're not very specific about which URL or which website or what category of website. You say if that particular resource, it can be a website or email server or FTP or anything, if it is hosted in so and so country, that should not be permitted. So just for our understanding, I have written a policy here which says if request is initiated from one of our LAN computers trying to reach some website which is hosted in say China, should be restricted, right? So let me try to access some website. Now say I want to access zoomgroup.com. We'll see if we are able to access the web page or not. So here, as you can see, I'm able to access the website, so no restrictions. If I want to access something like say Microsoft.com, As you can see, I'm able to access that, no restriction. Now let's say I want to access something like eBay. So the moment I click on eBay, it says you are trying to access a website which falls under online shopping category, which has been restricted by the administrator. The administrator did not permit users to access online shopping websites, so that has been blocked. So if a user tries to access some URL which is restricted, user will not have access to that, that will be blocked. But if you are trying to access certain resources which are permitted, which are authorized, you will be able to access. Now in the same way, so here I have some websites which are hosted in China. So let me say I want to access this website. We'll see if we will be able to access that or not. So looks like I'm unable to access that. But how do we see if that website has really been blocked? So for that, as I said, we need to monitor the logs. So I'm going into the log. I'm trying to check if access to this particular website has been permitted or restricted. Okay, so here as you see, there's a request from one of my LAN computer with IP address as 192.168.10.10, and this is that computer. So 192.168.10.10 is this computer's IP, right? So from this computer, there was a request which is received by the firewall to reach this particular URL, eastday.com, right? Now, when the request is coming into this particular URL, your UTM device has identified that this site is hosted in China, and according to your existing policy, this should not be permitted. This has to be blocked, right? So here it says the action taken is blocked, right? And we can also see the same thing here. So it says the action taken is blocked when you are trying to access this particular URL. So this is how, using a firewall and maybe a UTM device or a next generation firewall, you will be able to write some policies and implement security into your network, right? So is this clear? Yes, Mr. Abdul, as you are asking, right? Yes, when you speak of majority of the security devices, like say firewalls or unified threat management, the next generation devices, right? Majority of them ask you to do configuration using a graphical interface. Yes, you'll be using a GUI to do this. Of course, there are certain firewalls which will ask you to do configuration through CLI, but that is when you are only discussing about a firewall, right? See, there's one main difference that we have to understand. When you speak of a firewall, the firewall is just trying to permit or block. So let's say this is a firewall. You have your LAN network and you have internet. Job of a firewall is only to either permit or deny traffic. So it only has two actions: either permit the traffic or deny the traffic. It cannot do anything else. Now, in my case, I have written a policy where I'm permitting LAN network users to access anything on internet for HTTP and HTTPS. So I'm permitting LAN network computers to reach internet for HTTP or HTTPS based websites. So everything is good. But I have another requirement. Irrespective of whether it is HTTP or HTTPS, if there is a request from LAN network computer trying to access anything hosted in, say, China, as per our policy there in the example which I've shown you, if they are trying to access something which is hosted in China, it has to be denied. So what we are trying to do in this particular case is we are trying to filter traffic. So we are not taking a decision on permit or deny. Already permit or deny for HTTP or HTTPS has been taken. Now out of that traffic, whatever is permitted, you are trying to filter traffic which is going to China. Or in the same case, I have also said, if you're trying to access a shopping website, shopping websites should be blocked. Now, even in this case, we are actually trying to implement filters, right? So unfortunately, when you speak of a simple firewall, it will not be able to do that. Firewall can only say, I will either accept or deny the traffic. It will not be able to filter the traffic from whatever is permitted. So this is where you are coming across new generation devices, which are called as UTM or Unified Threat Management. So these devices will have firewall, intrusion prevention system, virtual private network, that is a VPN. Along with this, it also has some additional functionality like say URL filters, a gateway level anti-malware, gateway level anti-spam, bandwidth controls, which we call as quality of service, proper logging and reporting. When you include these many features, when you have all this kind of functionality, it will be difficult for you to go through command line and do the configuration. So that's the reason, right? Majority of your UTMs, they ask you to do the configuration through a graphical interface, right? If you are only speaking of this thing, only about a simple firewall, yes, you can do it through CLI. And generally, the older generation devices, we were not having a proper GUI and all. So we used to do everything through command line. But today the scenario has changed, right? You still have CLI for certain advanced troubleshooting, but majority of configurations, management, monitoring, you'll be doing it through a GUI. So things will be easy for you to see and understand what is actually going on there, right? Yeah. Mr. Faisal, Mr. Abdul, Mr. Krishna, and Mr. Mohammed, guys. Is this clear? Right. Yeah. So this is what we are going to discuss in our second module of cybersecurity, that is proactive defense and countermeasures. How do we work with firewalls? How do we work with intrusion prevention systems? How do we implement content security into our network? How do we go with virtual private networks so that we have secure communication between multiple branches? And then how do we monitor all this traffic? Right? How do we monitor all the traffic? This is also in our second module, right? Yeah. Okay, so now let us continue with our third module in the cybersecurity sessions. So this is all about incident response and management. So as I said, if there is some security breach or there happened some incident, right? How do we respond to it? How do we monitor that? How do we identify that? Right? So that is what we are going to discuss in this particular module. And here we will be using something called SIM, using which we can monitor what is actually happening in our network, right? So here SIM is trying to collect the logs from various network devices, right? So SIM stands for Security Information and Event Management. So what does a SIM do? It tries to collect logs from our servers, our firewalls, IPS devices, or maybe our routers, switches, workstations, or maybe if you are hosting some applications, like say you have hosted your organization's website. Now for hosting the website, you'll be using some application like say IIS or Apache or Nginx, right? So from these applications, it will be collecting the logs. Or say you have some DHCP or DNS kind of servers, it will also collect logs from all these devices. So after collecting the logs from all these devices, SIM is going to put all the logs in one place and trying to analyze them. It tries to analyze and understand what actually each and every device is trying to tell you. Now just imagine in your organization, you have something like 100 computers, right? You have something like 100 computers. You have 10 servers giving you with various services like website, FTP, email, DNS, Active Directory, DHCP, and all these kind of things. Then you have various network devices like you have various routers, you have switches, right? You have some firewalls. Now, when you have this many different kind of devices, is it really possible for an administrator to go to each and every device and monitor the logs? Yes. So as you guys say, it's not really possible. It's impossible for an administrator to go to each and every device and try to monitor the logs, right? So if administrator is unable to monitor the logs, how will an administrator know if your network is functioning properly or are there some kind of issues? Now maybe there is some kind of an attack going on. So if there is an attack going on, how will the administrator come to know about it? So there should be some technology which is continuously monitoring all different kind of logs and help the administrator to identify if something is wrong or if something is suspicious, right? So this is where the SIM technology comes into picture. Now SIM is trying to take logs from all the different devices, all various sources in your network, and SIM will try to keep all the logs in one place, read them, and try to understand what each and every log is trying to tell you. Right. Now, say for example, one of your server says, right, from the server, you have a log which says there are three failed login attempts. There are three failed login attempts to some user account admin. So this very clearly tells us that someone tried to log into this particular user account admin, and because they have given a wrong password, it was not successful. But where exactly this has happened from, you don't know, right? So now you also have to bring in the logs from your firewall. Now let's say firewall says there are three connections from some internet IP, let's say 1.1.1.7 to your server, right? Now if you see, only when you bring in the log from your server and log from the firewall, you are able to understand that, okay, someone from internet with this source IP address have tried to log in to this user account admin, and they have failed in all the three attempts, right? So generally what happens, if you only look into the firewall log, that there are three connections from this IP 1.1.1.7 to server. For what? Are they accessing the website or are they accessing something else? We don't know. Or when you see that there are some three failed logins, of course, this is telling us something that there is a user or there is some attempt to log into that particular user account called admin, which has failed three times. But where is this request coming from? Is it coming from one of my LAN computer or is it coming from internet? What is actually going on? So to understand that, we have to analyze these both logs together. So that's what SIM is trying to do. So SIM is trying to understand and analyze the logs from various resources in our network and show us what is actually happening in the network, right? So let me show you with the interface of a SIM solution, how actually it will identify and show you the updates and all. So I guess you are all able to view my screen, right? Yes, thank you. So here, this is Alien Vault USIM application, right? Now in this SIM solution, as you can see in the dashboard, it is showing us that there are various security related incidents happening on the network. So this is how it actually shows us if there is something wrong, right? So now let us say there is a system compromise event. There is some kind of malware or there is some kind of attack which has happened, right? So let me just select that event. So once I select the event, it will show me with all the data relevant to it, right? So here it says on some of my internal computers, say 192.168.204.226, right? There is a connection going from this computer to something on internet. And what does that computer is trying to connect with? It's connecting to some CNC server, command and control server related to a malware. And what is the priority? It's high risk. Means as an administrator, I have to first identify why is this computer getting connected to that remote server, which application might be initiating this connection, and immediately I have to block it, right? So it says this is high risk. Now there's some medium risk, right? So on one of the LAN computer 192.168.75.103, there is an adware identified. Now who is giving me all these updates? The antivirus application which is installed on the LAN computer is giving this log. SIM is analyzing it and telling us that, see, from your anti-malware, I have got this log, right? And this is what is happening in the network. And if you observe, I'm getting log from all different systems in the LAN. So I'm not looking into one specific computer. I'm getting the logs from various systems, right? So here it says that there is some adware. So not very risky. It's not going to damage your data or destroy your data, but it will really annoy the end user by constantly giving you with some pop-ups, some advertisements and all that, right? Anyway, that's an irritation to the end user. It would interrupt your workflow and all, right? But not as risky as the previous incident where we have seen that LAN computer is getting connected to a remote server, and once it is successfully establishing a connection to a command and control server, hacker can remotely take control of my machine and misuse this computer to do any other kind of attacks, right? So this is what SIM will actually help us to identify. SIM will tell us if everything in our network is functioning properly or do we have some kind of risk. And if there is a risk, what is the extent? Is it a high security risk issue or is it a medium security risk issue? What is actually happening? Right. So in cybersecurity, we are actually going to deal with all these three modules. Right. We are going to discuss about security risk assessment, where we are going to see what kind of a risk do we have in our network, right, when we are connecting our resources to internet. And then the second concept that we are going to discuss is how do we implement network security and countermeasures. And the third module is how do we monitor what is actually happening in our network in regards to all different devices and applications and all. And if there is something serious, something suspicious, how do we try to identify that and take the necessary actions to block it? So these are the three concepts that we will be discussing in our cybersecurity course, right? Guys, is this clear? Or if you have any queries, you can ask me or you can put it here in the chat window. Yes, Mr. Krishna, as you are asking, Even for the SIM, I'll be showing you like how do you install SIM and how do you do the integration with your network. Because see, generally when you start working with an organization, in most cases, SIM is already installed, SIM is already integrated into your network, right? You will only be monitoring what is happening or what kind of logs are being generated by SIM, right? You will not know or you will not see how do you install and how do you integrate SIM into your organization's network. That's what we are going to do. We will see how do we install the SIM solution, how do we integrate this SIM solution into the network, how do you start collecting logs from various devices into your SIM, how do you fine tune your SIM solution so that you will be able to understand what is actually happening with the network, right? Yes, we will be doing all these things, right? I'll show you how you do all these things practically, right? Yes, and generally when you speak of this jobs, yes, in the job, see, basically at the L1, if you are a fresher at the L1, right, you will not be doing any kind of configurations directly on the security devices, or you will not be auditing the networks, but you will be monitoring what is happening in the network, right? So that's where, of course, your SIM knowledge and all will be helpful, because how do you monitor, how do you understand the reports, or how do you understand the events or alarms which are triggered by the SIM? That all things will be helpful for you. But let's say you are already having some experience into the networking or network security field, right? You will also be working as L2 or L3, where you actually start working on these technologies, right? So what you are going to learn in these sessions, right? If you are clear with all the concepts and you keep doing the practical well, right? Even if you are working as a L2 or L3, right? You will be able to handle the issues. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. So now, before we conclude, let me also show you what sort of job opportunities you'll be getting, right? Regarding to this cyber security part, right? So I guess you're all able to view my screen, right? Yeah. So here, uh, I'm just showing you with some opportunities which are posted in this website, shine.com, right? So here Infosys is saying like, if you have some basic experience, like say you don't even have some experience or you're a fresher, right? You have some job opportunities where you'll be working with the SOC, right? So SOC is where you'll be monitoring what is happening in the network and all, right? And you'll be reporting it back to your L2 or L3 users, right? So again, Access Consultancy is also giving you with something like this, right? So 0 to 3 years. Why I'm showing you with the job opportunities with freshers or 0 to some 2 years or 3 years of experience is because generally in most cases people have a misconception that if you are coming into the network security, unless you have some 5 years or 6 years of experience, you don't get jobs. That's not true, right? Of course, every organization would have some requirements, right? Now, even if you are a fresher, you will be able to get a job into the security and all. So here again, see, we are asking you for ideas, sim, and all these things, right? So all the concepts what we are learning in this course will actually help you to secure a job, right? But don't expect that you will be doing all the configurations and all right from the beginning if you are not having some experience, right? If you are already having some experience, relevant experience into the networking or the network security field, yes, you will also be working on directly with the firewalls or security analysis and all, right? You will be implementing some policies and all that. Yes. Right. So is this clear? Yeah, you can also access this website. Like you can go with Shine or Naukri or Indeed, right? You'll be able to see you have n number of opportunities into this particular network security field, right? And one simple thing they all ask you, if you have knowledge in auditing the networks to see whether your network has been configured securely or not. That's what you are going to learn in the first module. And if say there are some security weakness, security issues, how do you fix it? That's what you'll be learning in the second module, that is countermeasures and firewalls. And the third module, how do you go on with day-to-day monitoring and understanding what sort of events are happening? That's what you are going to learn in the third module, the SIM, right? So with this, I conclude today's demonstration, right? If you have any queries, you can ask me. Yeah. Thank you all.